society and history. The rise of the novel. Novel is a modern form of literature. It is born because of print, which is a mechanical invention. Novels could reach a larger audience because of printout. Novels produce a number of common interests among the scattered and varied readers. The novel first took firm root in England and France. Novels began to be written from the 17th century and flowered in the 18th century. New groups of lower middle class, along with the traditional aristocratic and gentlemanly classes in England and France, formed the new readership of novels. With the growing readership, the earnings of authors increased. This made them free from financial dependence on patronage of aristocrats. They became independent to experiment with different literary styles. Henry Fielding, a novelist of the early 18th century, claimed he was the founder of a new province of writing where he could make his own laws. Here is an image of Henry Fielding, a novelist. Now let's learn about this person, Henry Fielding. Initially, novels did not come cheap and were out of reach for the poor classes. With the introduction of circulating libraries in 1740, people could get easier access to books. Apart from various innovations in printing, innovations in marketing also helped in increasing the sales and bringing down the price of novels. For example, the publishers in France realized that they could make high profits by hiring out novels by the hour. The world created by novels were more realistic and believable. While reading a novel, the reader was transported to another person's world. Novels allowed individuals the pleasure of reading in private. It also allowed the joy of publicly reading and discussing stories. People often got deeply involved in the lives of characters. In 1836, Charles Dickens' Pickwick Papers was serialized in a magazine. Magazines were cheaper and illustrated. Moreover, serialization allowed readers to relish the suspense. They could live for weeks in anticipation of the next plot of the story. The circulating libraries and Charles Dickens. He was the one who serialized magazines. Charles Dickens was the person who created suspense through a magazine. The world of the novel. More than other forms of writing which came before, novels are about ordinary people. More than other forms of writing which came before novels are about ordinary people. They do not focus on the lives of great people or actions that change the destinies of states and empires. In the 19th century, Europe entered the industrial age. While industrialization created new opportunities of growth and development, it also created new problems for the workers and the city life. It was the ordinary worker who always suffered in the mad race for profits. The growth of industry was accompanied by an economic philosophy which celebrated the pursuit of profit and undervalued the lives of workers. Many novelists created stories around the problems of ordinary people in the new cities. Charles Dickens, and with the notable authors of this period. Charles Dickens wrote about the terrible effects of industrialization on people's lives and characters. His novel describes Coketown, a fictitious industrial town, as a grim place full of machinery, smoking chimneys, rivers polluted purple, and buildings that all look the same. Emile Zola, The Hard Times by Charles Dickens. Community and society. The vast majority of readers of the novel lived in the city. The 19th century British novelist Thomas Hardy wrote about traditional rural communities of England. People were becoming more professional and the personal values were eroding at a faster pace. Thomas Hardy's Mayor of Casterbridge is a novel written in the rural backdrop. Thomas Hardy is an independent-minded man who follows his own style in conducting business. The novel by Hardy has use of vernacular language, which is the language spoken by common people. Use of vernacular helped Hardy in correlating with the common people who lived in that period. Novels also draw from different styles of language. The New Women. The most exciting element of the novel was the involvement of women. During the 18th century, the middle classes became more prosperous. Women got more leisure to read as well as write novels, and novels began exploring the world of women, their emotions, experiences, and problems. Many novels were about domestic life, a theme about which women were allowed to speak with authority. They drew upon the experience, wrote about family life, and earned public recognition. The novels of Jane Austen gave us a glimpse of the world of women in gentle rural society in early 19th century Britain. In Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, published in 1847, young Jane is shown as independent and assertive. Many novels began to ask questions about hypocrisy, which was prevalent in the contemporary society. Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, and Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Novels for the young. Novels for young boys idealize a new type of man, someone who is powerful, assertive, independent, and daring. Most of these novels were full of adventures set in places remote from Europe. Love stories written for adolescent girls also first became popular in this period, especially in the United States. Here is an example of adventurous as well as romantic novels. Colonialism and After. The novel originated in Europe at a time when it was colonizing the rest of the world. The early novel made the readers feel they were part of a superior community of fellow colonialists. The hero of Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe is an adventurer and slave trader. He is shipwrecked on an island. Robinson Crusoe treats colored people not as human beings equal to him, but as inferior creatures. He rescues a native and makes him his slave. He does not ask for his name, but arrogantly gave him the name Friday. Crusoe's behavior was not seen as unacceptable or odd, for most writers of the time saw colonialism as natural. Colonized people were seen as primitive and barbaric, less than human, and colonial rule was considered necessary to civilize them, to make them fully human. Only in the 20th century, writers like Joseph Conrad wrote novels that showed the darker side of colonial occupation. Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, and here is an image of Daniel Defoe. Novel comes to India. Stories in prose were not new to India. Vanavata's Kadambari, written in Sanskrit in the 7th century, is an early example. The Panchatantra is another example. There was also a long tradition of prose tales of adventure and heroism in Persian and Urdu, known as Dastan. The modern novel form developed in India in the 19th century. The development of the vernaculars, print, and a reading public helped in this process. Some of the earliest Indian novels were written in Bengali and Marathi. The earliest novel in Marathi was Baba Padmanji's Yamuna Paryatan, which used a simple style of storytelling to speak about the plight of widows. Leading novelists of the 19th century wrote for a cause. Colonial rulers regarded the contemporary culture of India as inferior. Indian novelists tried to produce a sense of national belonging and cultural equality with their colonial masters through their writing. Translations of novels into different regional languages helped to spread the popularity of novel and stimulated the growth of the novel in new areas. Early novels in India, Vanavata's Kadambari and Panchatantra. The novel in South India. Novels began appearing in South Indian languages during the period of colonial rule. Quite a few early novels came out of attempts to translate English novels into Indian languages. O. Chandu Menon, a subjudge from Malabar, tried to translate an English novel called Henrietta Temple, written by Benjamin Disraeli, into Malayalam. The Indian readers did not relish the translated novel as they were not able to identify with the characters. O. Chandu Menon wrote Indulekha, which was published in 1889. It was the first novel in Malayalam language. Kandukuri Viresalingam began translating Oliver Goldsmith's Vicar of Wakefield into Telugu. O. Chandu Menon, who wrote Indulekha, the first novel in Malayalam, and Kandukuri Viresalingam, he began translating Oliver Goldsmith's Vicar of Wakefield into Telugu. The novel in Hindi. Bharatendu Harishchandra, the pioneer of modern Hindi literature. He encouraged many members of his circle of poets and writers to recreate and translate novels from other languages. Srinivas Das's novel, published in 1882, was titled Pariksha-Guru, that means the Master Examiner. This novel cautioned young men of well-to-do families against the dangerous influences of bad company and consequent loose morals. Pariksha-Guru reflects the inner and outer world of the inner emerging middle classes. Pariksha-Guru reflects the inner and outer world of the newly emerging middle classes. The characters in the novel are caught in the difficulty of adapting to colonized society. The world of colonial modernity seems to be both frightening and irresistible to the characters. The novel tries to teach the reader the right way to live. It advises sensible men to be worldly wise and practical, to remain rooted in the values of their own tradition and culture, and to live with dignity and honor. The young are urged to cultivate the healthy habit of reading the newspapers. The novel keeps stressing the fact that traditional values should not be sacrificed. The writings of Devaki Nandan Khatri created a novel reading public in Hindi. His bestseller Chandrakanta-a, a romance with dazzling elements of fantasy, although it was apparently written purely for the pleasure of reading. This novel also gives some interesting insights into the fears and desires of its reading public. The Hindi novel achieved excellence through the writing of Premchand. He began writing in Urdu and then shifted to Hindi, remaining an immensely influential writer in both the languages. He drew on the traditional art of kissa-goi, that means storytelling. His novel Seva Sadan, that means the abode of service, published in 1960. It lifted the Hindu novel from the realm of fantasy, moralizing and simple entertainment to a serious reflection on the lives of ordinary people and social issues. Seva Sadan deals mainly with the poor condition of women in society. Issues like child marriage and dowry are woven into the story of the novel. It talks about the ways in which the Indian upper classes use whatever little opportunities they got from colonial authorities to govern themselves. Harishchandra, an excellent writer. Novel Pariksha-Guru and Chandrakanta, a romantic novel. Novels in Bengal. In the 19th century, the early Bengali novels lived in two worlds. Many of these novels were located in the past. The characters, events, and love stories based on historical events. Another group of novels depicted the inner world of domestic life in contemporary settings. Domestic novels frequently dealt with the social problems and romantic relationships between men and women. Bankim Chattopadhyay was a famous Bengali novelist. His novels had ingenious twists and turns of the plot. There was suspense and the language was relished. The prose style became a new object of enjoyment. Sharat Chattopadhyay was another popular novelist of Bengal and probably the rest of India. Famous novelists Bankim Chattopadhyay and Sharat Chattopadhyay. Colonial world. Novels are different in different parts of India. Chandu Menon, Bankim Chattopadhyay and Premchand were some of the regional writers. Uses of the novel. Colonial administrators found vernacular novels a valuable source of information on native life and customs. Such information was useful for them in governing Indian society with its large variety of communities and castes. The new novels in Indian languages often had descriptions of domestic life. They showed how people dressed, their forms of religious worship, their beliefs and practices, and so on. Some of these books were translated into English, often by British administrators or Christian missionaries. Indians used the novel as a powerful medium to criticize what they considered defects in the society and to suggest remedies. Writers used the novels to propagate their ideas about society among a wider readership. Novels also helped in establishing a relationship with the past. Many of the novels told thrilling stories of adventures and intrigues set in the past. The languages were a valuable source of information. The problem of being modern. Novels often spoke to the readers about the real world, but novels did not always show things exactly as they were in reality. Social novelists often created heroes and heroines with ideal qualities who the readers could admire and imitate. Madhavan, the hero of the novel, was also presented in ideal colors. He was a member of the newly English educated class of Nayars from the University of Madras. These characters were different from the mythological character of the early poetic literature of India. The novelist maintained an even balance between the modern image and the traditional image. Characters like Indulekha and Madhavan showed readers how Indian and foreign lifestyles could be brought together in an ideal combination. Famous character called Indulekha. Pleasures of reading. The novel became a popular medium of entertainment among the middle class. The circulation of printed books allowed people to amuse themselves in new ways. Picture books, translations from other languages, popular songs, sometimes composed on contemporary events, stories in newspapers and magazines, all this offered new forms of entertainment. Within this new culture of print, novels soon became immensely popular. Detective and mystery novels printed again and again to meet the demand of readers. The novel also assisted in the spread of silent reading. As late as the 19th century and perhaps even the early 20th century, written texts were often read aloud for several people to hear. Sometimes novels were also read in this way. Individuals sitting at home or traveling in trains enjoyed reading novels.